abduhu wa rasuluh sallallahu alayhi wasallam, which means in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. I bear witness that there is nothing worthy of worship except Allah and Allah alone, that Allah, the creator of all, has no partners, no associates. There is nothing and no one comparable to Allah. And I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him and all of the prophets of that prophetic brotherhood, that he is the last. He is the seal of the prophethood. Ameen. Brothers and sisters, I am very happy. I'm elated to have an opportunity once again to come to you over this respected platform, Salam Media, out of South Africa, with another edition of a conversation with El Hajj Maury Salakan. For the conversation today, we have two very special guests, two brothers I have known for a good number of years, and I have nothing but the deepest respect for them and for what they bring to the table of activism here in what we used to call the wilderness of North America. This country that likes to see itself as the leader of the free world, the sole remaining superpower on the block, the wilderness, when it comes to certain values and certain civilizational mores, despite the tremendous amount of wealth and development that Allah has blessed this country with as a test that we have not done very well with as a nation. So we're going to have some very provocative conversation today, no doubt. And I didn't receive my brother Imam Abdullah Faaruuq's bio soon enough to be able to use it for this introduction. So inshallah ta'ala, we're going to post his bio as well as the bio of Imam Khalid. We're going to post both of those bios. For now, let me just simply say of my brother Imam Abdullah Faaruuq that he has been the resident Imam. This is what I know of him, in addition to what I've already said about his credibility on the block. He has been the resident Imam of the Mosque for the Praising of Allah in Boston, Massachusetts since April of 1995. He is one of the most senior, if not the most senior Imam in the city of Boston. The masjid that he leads is the oldest Sunni masjid in the city of Boston, and I believe it has been around, well, I'm not going to speculate. Imam Faaruuq can let us know how long the masjid has been in place, but my understanding is that it is the oldest Sunni masjid in the city of Boston. So inshallah ta'ala, through the conversation, you're going to learn more about who Imam Abdullah Faaruuq is. I should note, though, that there is, well, that's something very special. I'm going to say to the end. This is going to be the final question that I put to Imam Abdullah Faaruuq, and it will be one that I can assure you many, not just in the United States, but in the international community, will be happy that I posed this question to him before this broadcast ends. As for our brother Imam Khalid Griggs, another respected brother, another respected African-American Imam. You know, I often say to my immigrant brethren, who I love, many of whom are very supportive of the work that we have been doing for years, and we have this very close kinship bond in terms of our spirituality. Those who have not given their brother Salakan a difficult time in his work, those who have been supportive. We have a very, very close bond, despite the fact that we belong to different tribes. I often say to my brothers, those who are receptive to this message, as well as those who kind of bristle at it, there is no path to power or security in the United States for any immigrant group, any, Muslim or non-Muslim, that does not intersect through Black roots. And we're seeing more and more of this reality as we go forward. Imam Khalid Griggs is the founding Imam of the Community Mosque of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He is the Islamic Circle in North America's Vice President for Social Justice and Civic Engagement, and a board member of the Institute for Dismantling Racism. He's the author of A Brief History of the Islamic Party in North America. He is a prison reform and social justice activist and a national and international lecturer. He is also founding member of Muslims for Social Justice in North Carolina and a member of the Poor People's Campaign. And this would be a good place to start this conversation with a question to Imam Khalid Griggs. Imam Khalid, what is the Poor People's Campaign? What is the significance of this movement, and why is it important? You know, why does it resonate with a special significance at this time in American history?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Brother Mari. It's been a pleasure working with you on different projects over the years. As for the Poor People's Campaign, it grew out of an effort that really originally started in North Carolina called the Moral Monday Movement, where Reverend William Barber, an activist, Christian pastor, who at the time, about 4 years ago, was the state president of the NAACP. And Reverend Barber brought a fusion group of people, folks who were representative of labor, educators, Muslims, Christians, people of no religious denomination or faith. He brought us together every Monday at the state capitol in the state legislature building in Raleigh, North Carolina, to make demands upon the state legislatures there, to demand that there be more sensitive and even more so than sensitive, that the poor people and those dispossessed in this country have their needs addressed in a meaningful way, and that the corporate monies and the military appropriations be severely cut to address the domestic needs of the people, and particularly the poor people. So this evolved into a larger fusion movement. And one of the things that Reverend Barber and Reverend Liz Theo Harris, the director of the Cairo Center, one of the things that they put together was this Poor People's Campaign. It was scheduled to be a march in Washington, D.C. on June the 20th, just yesterday, as a matter of fact. It was scheduled as a march, but because of COVID-19, it had to take on a digital platform, which actually has a very historic nature in being the largest gathering on a digital platform for any social justice effort, and also for poor people in general. The emphasis was on trying to elevate the voices of the poor Appalachian people in Appalachia, West Virginia coal miners and others, bringing them forth to present to the American people and to the world, I might add, what is the reality of those who are living in the undercarriage, underbelly of the society here in this country. It was the impetus and for it was the 1968 Poor People's Campaign that was organized and planned by Dr. Martin Luther King. And of course, on April the 4th of 1968, he was assassinated in Memphis. The march was to take place, this Poor People's Campaign, this original campaign, was to take place on Mother's Day, May the 12th, 1968. He was assassinated just over a month before this time. So Reverend Barber and Reverend Liz Theo Harris used that as an impetus 50 years later, just over 52 years later, to actually organize this demonstration that, as I said, was on a digital platform because of the virus. What is going on in the country today as it relates to the killer cops and their extrajudicial killings of Black people, Black men, primarily on the streets, Black women primarily in their homes or in the homes of relatives, that Black women have houses and relatives' houses have been invaded by these killer cops, and these Black women have been executed in their homes, while Black men, for the most part, have been executed in the street and outdoors. So this was a very important time, a very momentous time in American history to actually garner the American public's attention and the world's attention, because what we've seen happening in the aftermath of the street killing by this killer cop of George Floyd. We see an outcry, an outpouring on the streets all over the world because of this event.
Indeed. Imam Abdullah Faaruuq, on this issue of the climate that America is presently engulfed in as a result of this long overdue and very intense national and international focus on police abuse in the United States, what are your thoughts on what you're seeing, what you've seen unfold over the past few weeks here in the United States? And also, I think it's worth noting that it wasn't long ago that there was an incident of the killing of a Muslim, a young African-American Muslim in your city, under very questionable circumstances. Again, not that long ago. What are your thoughts? We're not hearing your sound. Are you muted?
I unmute myself. I'm sorry.
There you go.
Assalamu alaikum. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. This is something that's not new. It's a continuing hand of the oppressor in the lives of we who are African American. It is the same oppressive hand that has been extended towards people throughout the world by way of imperialism and colonialization of countries. And the knee that was on the neck of our brother George Floyd is the same knee that's been on the neck of humankind by the Europeans for the last 500 years. So it's not a new thing. But in the United States now, this has been going on for several hundred, 200 or 300 years. And even since this country has been established as a country based on its independence from England, we as African Americans, Africans, have been suffering the oppression of the hand of the oppressor in many ways. When they weren't able to keep us on no longer on the plantation, they found other ways, Jim Crow and other ways to make sure that they were able to capitalize on our human self and to keep us working. So what we are witnessing is the same oppressive hand, and it's also, but everybody can see it now. Before, Allah would see things that nobody else could see. The angels can witness things, and some people knew. With the advent of cell phones now, the world is able to see what they've been doing. And this explosion of concern and activism on the part of Black Lives Matter and so many others is not a new thing. It is a thing that's being witnessed more clearly now. And so what is our job? Our job is now, I believe, because they call this the land of the free and the home of the brave. This is what we've understood their claim. I consider it, and I continue to say, that it's the land of the coward and the home of the slave. Because this is our home. We have much of what we have done as Black people in this country, this nation would not be wealthy as it is now if it wasn't for the free labor that they were able to cull out of our human existence here over the last few hundred years. And the cry now is for justice. My concern now is that when this thing has passed, when this uproar has passed and the demonstrations have passed, what are we going to do? What is going to be left behind in the way of us making a difference? Certainly the fear that is in the hearts of the white people of not being able to continue in their oppression and control of people is certainly evident in the way they speak, in the way they behave, and in what's going on. Now, the young man that was killed in Boston was a dear nephew of mine, Sister Rahima Rahim's son, and I told him that, this is a land where they say they can catch lions and tigers and bears, but they couldn't catch this young man, and they set him up to be killed. It was a murder, just like it was a murder of this man, George Floyd. This is murder, wholesale murder in a continuing way, regularly, because they feel that they can get away with it. What are we going to do now is the issue. And how are we going to explain this in an Islamic fashion to bring about the change that's so desperately needed? Because Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois, said that the problem of the 20th century was the color lie. It hasn't changed. It's bled over to the 21st century. It continues, and they feel that they have some, as they say, manifest destiny because they're able to do it and do what, and they do. Then they figure that it's their right. And the healing that's necessary is for this country to come under what is referred to as one country on. They say this is one nation under God. We know that, but they're acting as though they're God. The Taghut, the oppressor, acts as though he feels that it's his ability to control the lives of people, utilize humankind in the way they want, take the land, usurp their people's humanity, and throw us what they call civil rights. But civil rights can be legislated.
That's right.
But legislation doesn't change the hearts of the people. We need Islam, the willingness and submission of the people of this country to submit to God, Almighty Allah.
Indeed. On the question, the whole question of what can possibly come next, this moment that we are in as a nation is one that I see as, and I'm not alone in this, there are many others who have expressed the same view, as being truly, truly unprecedented. I mean, I've never seen a moment like this in, all the years that I have been a conscious being on this earth, with the possibilities that we have been afforded, both as a result of the impact that this pandemic, this coronavirus pandemic, has had on our nation and the world. In the words of Imam Abdullah Faaruuq, Abdullah Faaruuq, the words of Imam Abdullah Hakim Quick, he referred to this as an opportunity for a reset, the changes that this pandemic has imposed upon nations, changing what had been the norm. This is an opportunity for a reset. One of those areas where we can see the possibility of a reset is how policing is done in the United States of America, and how criminal justice across the board is dispensed. We have a lot of political prisoners. We have a racially and class-based system of justice that is mired in all kinds of inequities, all kinds of injustices. But at the same time, we have a focus now on this system, and especially on policing and how policing has been done in this country, that is unparalleled. The focus, the attention, the activism around it, the pressure on the system. It's not just blacks out in the streets. It's not just, allied other folk of color. There are whites, young whites, in many of these huge demonstrations, outnumbering the African Americans in the demonstrations. This is truly an opportunity for something significant to happen in the way of positive change, in my view. But the question is, I mean, will this pressure be sustained? What will come out on the other end? What are your views on this? I'd like to put this to both of you brothers, beginning with you, Imam Khalid. Your views on the possibilities coming out of what we're seeing today. You're muted, brother. You're muted.
I'd like to concur with you, Mari, that these are very unusual and unique times. People who have been striving for social justice in this country since the inception of the nation. I agree with you wholeheartedly that in my days, an adult and even from high school days, I've never seen the kind of moment that we're living in right now, with the fusion of people of all kinds of backgrounds, white folks, brown folks, red folks. It's not the first time that we have tried to come together over the years. But this is a moment in the social history of this nation where the demands are so focused, as you have mentioned, they're so focused on systemic racism that I'm saying perhaps for the first time, it's not just allow us equal access in public accommodations. This is a moment in our history that has to be transformed into a movement. I'm a firm believer that no significant transformative actions can take place in the nation without organization. Just spontaneous outbursts are not going to bring about change. It doesn't matter what expression these outbursts take. It's going to take sustained, thoughtful, and diligently working brothers and sisters, not just in the streets, but appealing to the thought leaders to try to come together with others to try to frame. None of us have, first of all, there's no one solution to solve all of the problems in this nation, even with the police departments. I'm so encouraged that the kind of actions that are being promoted today and actually are taking place, like in Minneapolis. Who would have thought that the city of Minneapolis, a city that has such a long history of police misconduct, of police brutality, the kind of racist attacks and assaults that that police department has had, who would have thought just a few weeks ago that the city council of Minneapolis, Minnesota would be calling from a total disbandment of this police department because of the actions that they have taken against Black people and people of color in the city. So I think it's not just a moment in time where we're seeing a lot of people out in the street. Very meaningful legislation is being proposed, very meaningful legislation, in my humble opinion, and looks at particularly police departments. Let me just say this quickly. In the small city where I live, Winston-Salem in North Carolina, this city council and the mayor in little old Winston-Salem has said that we are going to direct funds away from this local police department, maybe to the tune of $1 million, and put it in social services and these kinds of things. And I honestly believe that none of these local changes that are popping up all over the nation, that none of these local city councils, none of these municipalities would be looking at the police in ways that like they are looking at now, and how can they transform these police departments. Let me just add one quick point, if I can. It should come as no surprise, and it's no surprise for any of us who are aware of the history of policing in the United States, that it can't be a surprise what we're seeing happening and has unfolded on the streets in America. Because the model that policing was based on in the United States was the model of slave patrols in southern United States. And the slave patrols actually started not in North Carolina, but in South Carolina in the early 1700s. Rich, racist, bigoted, enslaved people owners, right? People who felt they owned other human beings, hired these other racist, poor, bigoted whites as slave patrollers to go out and to capture those who've escaped from these plantations, and then to protect the property, the interests of these enslaved people holders, protect the property of the plantation, including those who were enslaved. And so the model that modern day policing was based on, and for the most part, they have played the same role in the Black community as those slave patrollers have. They are an occupation force, particularly in inner city communities. They are there for occupation. They are not there to protect and serve, even though they may have it written on their police cars, and they may say that this is why we exist. But because that racist beginning has never been fundamentally addressed with the policing in this country, we continue to have episode after episode after episode of police maltreatment of people, of Black people in particular, and other people of color. And it, you know, it's been amazing to me. I come from a trade unionist family. I used to be a union organizer myself in the deepest of the South. And it's been amazing to me that police unions remain unscathed as unions across this nation in almost every city, in every area. Police unions are some of the strong, if not the strongest unions in this country, while other unions have been busted, and those who are trying to protect the interests in the workforce and in other places. These people who are running these unions, who are primarily white men across this country, they have been one of the greatest obstacles of bringing these policemen to accountability when they are abusing the people that they are charged with protecting and serving. Then, of course, we have this, and this is being addressed as well. We have this, the name escapes me right now. Is it partial liability? The qualified liability. It's
qualified immunity.
I'm sorry, thank you. Qualified immunity, where police officers and other public officials are able to hide behind this qualified immunity, protect their being dealt with in the ways that they demand. And I mean, you know, the ways not going upside their head, but through the courts and other recourses, being fired from their jobs and this kind of thing.
Imam Faaruuq, many of the viewers and listeners, those who are tuned into this conversation via audio, they, if knowing where Winston, North Carolina is in the United States, they would not be too surprised to hear this type of analysis come from Imam Khalid Griggs. But you, brother, you are up there in the liberal North. you are up in you know, in one of the territories that is considered to be the more enlightened part of the United States of America. How say you, from where you are?
I can give you some history. We were talking about young brother Osama.
Yes.
Rahim, who was killed, murdered, and he was murdered. They asked
Yes.
one police officer, a captain from amongst the Boston police officers, asked me to please retract my statement because maybe I didn't know that the police officers knew what they were doing and you shouldn't blame them. So I retracted and said that I was sorry for saying that because he was right about that. But later on, I found out that they actually, through phone conversations, they actually planned to kill him, and they killed him. I was beat up in front of my mother's house back in 1987 by some police officers who pummeled me and my son and left me with a concussion. I've seen it since I was a little boy. So I'm not 73 years old, probably a little bit younger, a little bit older than Imam Khalid.
Yes, you are.
So one or the other, we're around the same age. We've seen 7 decades of this. When I was a little boy selling newspapers back in 1958, I started selling when I was 10 years old in 1957. And when I was younger, they used to pat my head. I'd go into the bar room and sell newspapers and get a big tip. When I got to be 12 years old, that same pat turned to a smack in the back of the head. I couldn't understand why. I went home to my mother, because I was a bit in shock because I grew up in an area where there was white. We all went to the white, black, Chinese, Hispanic, and a lot of blacks coming from down south in the late 50s. And so, of course, we called each other's names when we played basketball, and we also ate over one another's house. But that was a bit of a cover for me to grow up, only to find out and realize that there was an evil sentiment in the hearts of adults against black grown-ups. When I went to my mother, she said, "Son, you done sprung up. They no longer see you," she's Jamaican, "they no longer see you as a boy. The minute they started to see my young manhood, they treated me different." So it exists here, even up into the New Hampshire and Maine and other places throughout New England, that although the better educated whites sometimes pretend to, and I'm not saying they're all like this here, but many of them pretend to be not racist. You have to look at our brother who was at the Harvard professor outside of his door, being accosted and being arrested and being manhandled at his home, and he's a Harvard professor. Don't think that that it doesn't exist this way. It's a little bit less overt, it's more covert, hidden. But the police officers here, although they're being witnessed, and there's a little bit less, Also, I also grew through the busing issue here in Boston. It's alive and it's well, but not all white people are like that. Some of them are well-meaning, good, significantly interested in the well-being of the nation and the world. So I can't condemn all white people, but know that it is a living and existing sentiment in the hearts of many of the people here, and I felt it I felt their hand against me, I felt their foot, and I felt their club personally. And I've also witnessed the death of I consider him my nephew because his mother and I've known him since he was born, and Osama Rahim was murdered by the police here in Boston. I hope they hear that. And I want them to know that I witnessed it, and I know that they killed him. And it was another example of the injustice and the evil that rests in the hearts of so many of white Americans. And I ask Allah that He would heal America, because this is not the land of the free and the home of the brave, because of the way they continue to act as the land of the coward and the home of the slave.
Imam Faaruuq, on that, on the point that you just made, and I'm glad you made that point. I'm glad that you made that point about all white people not being the same. I often, and I find myself having to make this observation, more and more these days, given the polarized state that this country is in, that there is only one race, according to our perspective as Muslims. There's one race, the human race. We're all from that one original parentage source, and the only thing that distinguishes us in terms of our our value is our deeds, you know, our consciousness and our deeds. But there's only one race, and there are only two types of people. There are good people and there are bad people, and you find them among all the tribes. You find good and bad among all the tribes. But staying with New England for a minute. Now, I spent a number of my formative years in New England. I remember it well. I remember the atmosphere well. My family moved to Bridgeport, Connecticut when I was 16 years of age. And I'll never forget the very first week of high school. My very first week of high school, there was there were fights. There was a lot of racial unrest throughout the country, and including in New England. This was in 69. Yeah, 69. I remember my first week at Central High School, there was a fight. And as I can recall, the only ones that ended up being expelled, not just suspended, expelled, were the black students. I was one of those black students that ended up being expelled that year because of the fights that took place outside the Central High School that very first week of the school year. That was my kind of wake-up call to, you know, this new environment my family had moved into from Camden, New Jersey. Moving right along, some years later, I'm engaged in my human rights work out of Washington, D.C., where I've been based since 1975. And my work brought me to Boston. In fact, this was my first trip ever. As I can recall, this was my first trip ever to Boston. There was a conference I was invited to be a participant in at the Old South Church, one of the oldest religious institutions in the country, the Old South Church. And I will never forget, not just what took place inside the church. It was a very successful conference, well attended, from people from all over the country and from different parts of the world. One of the featured speakers at that conference, that weekend conference, was former Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, the late Desmond Tutu. He was one of the featured speakers. And I'll never forget the drama that unfolded outside the Old South Church. There were demonstrations all 3 days, and these demonstrations were large. These were large demonstrations, and they were demonstrating against Desmond Tutu. They were demonstrating against the organizers of the conference, and that conference was all about what was happening in occupied Palestine. And it was quite interesting that you had this highly respected, internationally regarded elder, who I believe he was then Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, and he was the guest of honor. And you had these folks outside demonstrating against him, against the conference. Why? Because they were drawing attention to the apartheid in occupied Palestine. And they were just denouncing. This was a big demonstration. And I found out later that some of the main architects of the demonstration outside were Zionists, Christian Zionists, and Jewish Zionists from some of the same organizations that campaigned viciously to try to prevent the completion of the masjid, the Islamic Center on Malcolm X Boulevard, that large Islamic center. Can you take a moment to kind of weigh in on that, Imam? Your insider knowledge about that whole effort and that atmosphere surrounding, especially the campaign against the completion of that Islamic Center, which is one of the largest in the country, and how that factors into this whole dialogue about justice and bigotry and the climate the country is in. How does that all factor into it?
Well, the Zionists, as you say, not the Jews. We won't. I'm certain that Khalid will agree with me that there are many Jews in this country who are fine and upstanding people. Had a definite. Well, first of all, let me give you a little bit of history. The history of that whole edifice finds its foundation in us, the African American. We had that property on the tentative designation from the city for 10 years. It originally was a $7 million project, and we had raised after 10 years only $750,000 coming from the African Americans. So we ceded the property to the Islamic Society of Boston so that the property could be built, so that we wouldn't lose the designation, because it was a wonderful, nearly acre and a half, 2 acre site in the middle of the emerging Muslim community. And so when it was all Arab run after that, because they were able to get the money, because many of their students who were here going to MIT and Harvard and BU had family from overseas, and they were able to raise the money beginning in 2003, 4, 5, and before it started to be built. The Jews railed hard against that because they knew that the Muslims were coming, and they did everything they could to try to to undermine the credibility of the organization. It was a mistake on the part of the Arab brothers not to put us in the forefront of it, because it would have been a homespun effort to try to build it. And so they attacked it from the standpoint of saying that the Arabs and people from overseas are building this institution, and we're all a bunch of terrorists. And they included my name in it by saying that I said something. I told them to pick up all the Muslims need to pick up everything they can, whether it was a typewriter, whether it was a scalpel if you're a doctor, a gun, whatever thing that you're utilized to, and be involved in this. And they said, see, he says he's trying to incite the Muslims to pick up weapons against America. No, we have a double problem being African American. We're black and we're Muslims. And being black and Muslim put a double weight on us as far as our value and credibility in this country. However, we are probably the most valuable, we African Americans, to the cause of Islamic outgrowth, because we were here by way of being brought here as to be enslaved, not as slaves, to be enslaved. We were brought. We have undergone the brutal and inhuman oppression of the hand of white people in this country, to be utilized as slaves, and then under peonage, when they could no longer legally treat us as slaves, they found other ways to keep us down. So yes, Islam and being black in this country here leaves you both economically less powerful, and then you have other issues of color and race. They do the same thing here. They redline, and they use Jim Crow, but they do it in subtle ways, because these people are well educated here. This is what Boston is referred to as the Athens of America, because of the major universities that are here, Harvard, MIT, BU, Brandeis, whatever ones that you might want to make mention of, Boston College. And so they're able to shroud their distaste for us, or their desire to want to make us oppress us with their robes and their eloquent speech. But we still have ghettos here. The black people's money stays a very short period of time in the ghetto. We have to spend it amongst us. We don't have the institutions of learning. We don't have the institutions of our food. We don't have our own banks. Very few of them. It's far less than what is going on down south, but it's still here, and they do it in different ways.
Imam Khalid, one of the things that I wanted to do with the presence of you two brothers on this program is to do something that we don't do enough within our Muslim community, and that is give attention to another aspect of our criminal justice challenges, and that is our political prisoners. You are an African-American leader who came out of the Islamic Party, very conscious brother. You embraced Islam, you know, and you've been, you know, sensitive to issues of justice all of the years that you have been leading and part of organizing efforts throughout the country. You came to know Imam Jamil Abdullah Al-Amin, who is now in his 20th year of political imprisonment, wrongful imprisonment. Even former ambassador, UN ambassador, a U.S. ambassador to the UN, Andrew Young, former mayor of the city of Atlanta, one of the surviving stalwarts of the part of the African American human rights struggle called the Civil Rights Movement. A highly respected figure. Just not long ago, he declared publicly that he believes Imam Jamil Al-Amin, the former H. Rap Brown, is an innocent man, you know, who he has encouraged the district attorney's office in Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia, to revisit his case. What are your thoughts on Imam Jamil, especially as he relates to this moment that we're in, and the prospects for something to be done around his ongoing political imprisonment and political imprisonment across the board, especially as it pertains to the members of our tribe? And we are the ones that are disproportionately represented among those roles, and many of them are dying off. We just had a brother. In fact, I don't know if one of the brothers who was part of that police assault on Powhatan Village in Philadelphia in '78 just recently passed. He got released from prison after decades of imprisonment, and he just recently passed. What are your thoughts on all this, Aki?
Yeah, you know, first of all, I want you, if you will, before the program ends, to mention your latest book entitled "The Imprisonment of Imam Jamil Abdullah Al-Amin." Is it a government conspiracy? It's a very thought-provoking chronology and analysis and reflective moments from people who have interacted with Imam Jamil over the years. You know, and as a member of the Islamic Party, responsibilities that I had in this organization, I was charged with the responsibility before Imam Jamil was released from captivity in 1971. When he embraced Islam in 1971, and right before he was released, I was charged with the responsibility as a member of the Islamic Party to get in contact with him, to write him and make a connection with him. Before the letter got to him, he had actually been released and had moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where I connected with him for the first time. I was always inspired by his works, but I physically had the opportunity to meet with him and speak a lot with him over the years and interact in different forums and formats with him. But Imam Jamil represents a bridge from the Black freedom struggle in this country and our transition to Islam. And so often, many of even our young African-American Muslims do not know the role that Imam Jamil played in this Black freedom struggle in this country. And so when we talk about the responsibility or the necessity of immigrant Muslims in the United States to recognize the role that we as African-American Muslims have played, we also have to educate young people and educate ourselves about the role that this brother, Imam Jamil Abdullah Al-Amin, played to struggle and to fight and to bring about changes in this country before Islam, before he embraced Islam. And he was not the only one during this time frame. Max Stanford from the Revolutionary Action Movement. There were so many others who embraced Islam along this long path to justice and righteousness. They embraced Islam. And so Imam Jamil and so many others who are still in prison or who have recently been released need to be, have to be recognized, their cases, their situations studied. And we should pray as Muslims to remove whatever cowardice may be in our hearts, to step forward like you, Brother Maury, like Brother Imam Abdullah have done, to step forward and speak a truth to power, to organize and do what we can to bring to the public's attention cases like Imam Abdullah al-Amin, which is an absurd case when you get into it. When you study this case, it is absurd that this man was charged and convicted and has been penalized and punished in the way that he has for such a fabricated, ridiculous, in my humble opinion, such a ridiculous kind of case. But it is the onus, the weight, the burden is on African American Muslims in this country. Insist upon those Muslims in the immigrant community and others in the United States who have the funds to be able to help in the legal process of Imam Jamil. I'd like to share this one thing. I know, and this is not something that I'm speculating about, I know that at the beginning of Imam Jamil's unlawful incarceration and then this ridiculous conviction, that the major Muslim organizations in the United States committed to Sister Karima, Imam Jamil's wife, and committed to those working with Imam Jamil a certain sum of money, that each organization said that they would contribute at least $50,000 towards his legal defense. I know from having talked to people who were a part of these kinds of confabs where that commitment was made, that the FBI approached leaders and members of these organizations and threatened them that if you do this, that something is bad is going to happen either to your organization, we're going to freeze your funds, we're going to start deporting people, or whatever it is, if you continue, if you follow through on this financial commitment that you've made. And so at the very outset, Imam Jamil's defense was crippled because of from not having the necessary funds at the beginning to bring about. I'm not saying he doesn't have good legal representation, but I'm just saying that it was a delayed kind of representation because of the expectation that we were going to, those who were supporting Imam Jamil, and particularly Imam Jamil, that these national Muslim organizations were going to give funds for his legal defense, not on just a one shot, but continue to do it. This is a tactic that has been used against the Black freedom struggle. That lunatic J. Edgar Hoover, ever since, and he was the first FBI director, you know, when he died in the 70s or whenever it was, I can't remember exactly right now, he was responsible for using the Federal Bureau of Investigation to intimidate, to destroy, to threaten supporters of people like the Black Panther Party, the Republican New Africa, and others, threatened them in their support, even though many continued to do what they could, even under that environment. But I think the onus is on those of us who come from the African American community, who know the benefit that we have derived and this nation has derived from the work of brothers like Imam Jamil Abdullah al-Amin. We have to step forward more. We have to do more to try to bring our brothers who are hiding in the shadows, who are afraid that something may happen to them if they step forward. We must do more to try to bring them out of the shadows and to bring other of our brothers and sisters into this process.
I agree. And to Imam Abdullah Faaruuq, brother, You may be surprised, both you and Imam Khalid may be surprised to learn that there has been for a number of years a solid base of support for our dear sister in Islam, Dr. Afia Siddiqui, in South Africa. In South Africa, as well as in the UK, as well as in Norway, you know, there is support for Afia outside her Pakistani homeland. Unlike me, brother, I know Afia's family very well. I had the pleasure of traveling to Karachi, Pakistan, and spending time with her family and many of the frontline supporters in Pakistan, traveling to different parts of the country. And I know Afia's brother in Houston, Muhammad, a good supporter of our work. And you know, but I've never met Afia Siddiqui. I tried a couple of times, and they would not allow me to visit. I remember just a few years ago, I think it was 2014, after we got back from overseas, we had arranged for a mobilization in Texas, right, you know, in the neighborhood of where our sister is being held, on that base in Fort Worth. And we had made a request of former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark, who has spoken very strongly on Afia. He has described her case as the worst case of individual injustice he's ever witnessed. And that says a lot coming from someone as, you know, with his age and background. He attempted to visit Afia. They allowed him to visit Lynn Stewart, who was imprisoned there at that time, but not Afia. And they claimed that you know, he couldn't visit her because she did not want the visit. And later we come to find out that she never knew until she spoke with her family, and her family asked her why didn't she, you know, welcome the visit of Ramsey Clark, and she said she was not told, you know, that he was trying to visit her. If she had known, she would have welcomed his visit. So they just flat out lied. But I say all that to say, you know, this remarkable Muslim woman, Afia Siddiqui, has been now imprisoned for 17 years. Unlike me, Imam Faaruuq, you knew Afia personally. I'm sure that there are many supporters of our sister who will see this broadcast, who would love to hear you share some personal tidbits about the Afia Siddiqui you knew. What was it about her that made her such an outstanding figure, and someone who now her case has resonated throughout different parts of the world? Imam Faaruuq.
Afia Siddiqui, though diminutive in size, probably about 100 pounds and about 5 feet tall, was both genuine and brave. She left a message that resonated with our community, amongst the men and the women of this community, of her sincere concern for people who were being mistreated. And she spent her time, she did what Allah asked of her, spending her time and her money and her effort to try to ensure that people who were being marginalized throughout the world, the Muslim community, were people who had a voice through her. She made the Muslim men feel bad about their lack of contributing what they had in order to send Qur'ans or clothing or whatever it was overseas to help other people. So bravery is primary, but sincerity is even more important, because many people are brave but insincere. She was also pretty well educated as far as being a Muslim. And so she had the book of Allah Ta'ala and the Sunnah of Muhammad in her voice and in her behavior. You have to have these two sources of material as what provides your basis for morality. And there's a difference between morality and ethics. Ethics can be, you know, hey, look, we're not going to kill nobody on Sunday. That's the ethic, you know. So men can develop ethics, but they have no place in the word of Almighty God. She had her effort based in what Allah said, peace, glory be to him, and what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what he said, peace and blessings be upon him. So she was both an example and a voice of encouragement to people to be more genuinely and thoroughly involved in the issues of concern amongst the people of Bosnia and Syria and every other place of the world during the time that she was alive and well and functioning here in Boston. I eaten over her house 2 or 3 times and several times, and more than that. She lived in several different places, and I ate at her house. And we had good and genuine conversations regarding the issues at hand. She was always willing to give her time and was not afraid. I remember her husband being a little less involved and kind of telling her to hush, but she was not one to be hushed. So when you see somebody that small and that brave, I can understand why they wanted to stop her. Not because she was a threat. She didn't have a gun. They accused her of picking up a rifle that was heavy as she was and shooting at and you know, they had her trapped. They shot her. They captured her. They brought her back to the United States, all illegally. And these people are the same devils that have abused our brother. You know, I call H. Rap Brown because that's when I knew him first. He was involved in the movement for the well-being of black people in the world long before he was Muslim. And the same courage and the same character that he had before he was a Muslim, he brought it into Islam. As the Hadith says, those who are a certain character outside of Islam, when they come into Islam, they bring that character with them. So his voice was there, and he's willing to sacrifice. This is why they captured these people or killed these people. That's why they killed, regardless of our religion, this is why they killed Martin Luther King. Because he became increasingly brave and influential and seriously concerned about the well-being of people, not only for the black movement, but also for what was going on in Vietnam. The minute he started to speak out in that way, they had to take him down. Malcolm X or Al-Hajj, you know, they're going to want to stop these voices. Sometimes my wife tells me, you should be a little bit more subtle and choose your words a little bit better, or they will try to stop you. And have come to me, asking me, why do I call this the land of the coward and the home of the slave? And I asked them, and I give them some examples of what the people have done who run this country and who have pushed the slavery and advanced their program in this country. What do you call these type of people? And I named the things they do. I said, is that bravery? They say, no. I said, well, it's cowardice. And this is my home, and I call this my land. So, you know, I'm not very brave at all. But I consider this woman a fear. I consider her not only sincere, but brave. And I ask Allah to lift the hand of oppression off of her, to reward her with the good of this life and the life to come, because she has suffered many years being imprisoned. And I don't know what's going on with her. And I can only it hurts my heart because I know her personally. I've eaten from her hand, listened to her voice, and seen her in person. So this is what the oppressor does. Try to strike fear in the hearts of us as well. We don't need to be afraid, though. Yeah. I fear Allah.
Well, brothers, we are at the end of this conversation. What I want to do is give both of you an opportunity to make just take a minute or two to make any closing thought that you feel like you need to convey before we end the program, whether it be nasiha, some words of sincere advice to the viewers, both Muslim and non-Muslim, especially given this very unique moment we're in as a nation and as a world, or anything else that might be on your mind, any thought that you would like to share in conclusion to this this broadcast. So let's begin with you, Imam Khalid.
Yes. I guess the closing message that I'd like to convey is that those of us who are Muslim and who are committed Muslims and who want to see the word of Allah supreme, it is incumbent upon us to not sit on the sidelines and let this moment in history pass us by while we sit around, as some Muslims are doing, And I love all of my Muslim brothers and sisters, but while they continue, even under these situations, to debate whether or not we should literally use mishwak before making salat, or arguing, you know, about the length of the pants, that these things, on the scale of things, they are considerations that are part of the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But justice is something that we are, all of us are mandated to take a stand about. And everyone is Muslim is very familiar with the hadith where the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam equated having iman, faith, with taking a stand against something that you see wrong and unjust. And so we're watching this unfolding, unpackaging of one of the greatest forms of injustice that's been perpetrated against human beings since the time of chattel slavery in this country. So we can ill afford to sit on the sidelines now and have some of these useless debates relative to what's going on today, and even debating whether or not something like saying Black Lives Matter, this is asabiya, that is nationalism. I guess it's because of my age, I've lost patience, truly, with these kinds of things at this moment. So we just committed Muslims. We have to come together. Brother Mark, give me 30 seconds.
Go ahead.
I want to share something with Imam Abdullah.
Okay.
Years ago, when, I don't know if he's still a chaplain, a university chaplain, but years ago he was and I was, and I was reading an article in a publication, and I didn't pay attention to where the article had been written, but it was talking about you, and talking about this person and this militant, this violent, this person who is trying to recruit students for jihad and all of these kinds of things. And I was reading it, and I was saying, wow, this ain't the, you know, Imam Abdullah that I know. And then it transitioned, and the article said, and then there's Khalid Griggs. So it's, God, what could it possibly say? But we were both targets at that time of the Clarion Fund, the Clarion Project, which is the most well-funded Islamophobic group in America. So we shared it. I don't know if you've ever seen that article, but we shared that connection, not just on this radio program, but we shared it in print about both of us.
I saw your name too, and I said, how did he get in the mix? But I was at the top of the list, though. So I was
you're at the top of the list, man. And then
before we go is this. I advise and encourage, not warn, but I advise and encourage the Muslims and the immigrant Muslims to look closely at what they're doing and to align themselves with the African American, not the cause, but the African American suffering, and realize that they will have no success in this country until the issues of racism are solved, because the people who hate us hate you as well. Mm-hmm. And we have to be aligned in the struggle to uphold what is right and forbid what is wrong. Allah has commanded us to be those amongst that let there be a party from amongst us that calls to all call to all that is good, uphold what is right and forbid what is wrong. And if we see a wrong, if we see a wrongdoing, we should stop it with our hands. We're not in the position to stop it with our hands. If you can't do that, the Prophet ﷺ commanded us that we should speak out against it. And if that is not within our ability, then we should hate it in our hearts, and this is the weakest of faith. We cannot take the weakest link in our faith, which I believe is the strongest, should be the strongest link, and that is to hate this wrongdoing in our hearts. And since we don't have the ability to stop the hand of the oppressor, let us raise our voices in unison against the wrong the evil is doing, and not be afraid of what they are capable of doing against us, because our voices will be heard. And the oppressed person is the voice that Allah listens to very fervently, that he would look upon what we say. And I call upon Allah, number one, But I also encourage also the African Americans to begin to cooperate amongst themselves and stop these things about, like you said, the mishwak or the length of our liha or beard or the length of our trousers. These are things that are important, but on the scale of things, that as you have said, they are less important. And the thing, establishing adl, justice, is the only way that we're going to be able to move ahead. Whether your pants are a little bit longer than they should, or your beard is not as long as it should, or whether using the miswak just before you make your salah or whatever, those are important things, but not on the scale of establishing justice and being involved in the struggle.
Yes.
The last thing I would say that we need to, with all sincerity, call upon Allah. He says, "Ad'uuni astajib lakum." Call upon me, and I will answer your prayers. So I'm asking Allah that He brings success to us because of our involvement, that we remain sincere. And I have to come down there. My father's from the Carolinas, my mother's from Jamaica. So I got some damn, island blood in me now, and I got the Carolina, Geechee blood,
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, come halfway.
I'm an all-American kid.
Yeah. Come halfway and stop in North Carolina. Alhamdulillah.
I will. We're gonna exchange numbers later on or whatever, and we're going to make sure that we stay connected now, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, alhamdulillah. May Allah Ta'ala bless both of you brothers and bless your communities, bless your families, and may Allah Ta'ala benefit everyone who has the opportunity to see this broadcast with the insights that you've shared. We ask Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to forgive us for our mistakes and to purify our deeds, our intentions, and may Allah Ta'ala bless us to die not except in a state of Islam. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihati wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr. I want to thank you, brothers. I want to thank our audience for tuning in and for staying with us. I want to thank Salam Media for inviting me to this platform, and may Allah Ta'ala put barakah in it for us all in this life and the next. Thanks again.
One more thing.
Oh, yes.
Allah says that He does not change the condition of a people till they first change what is in themselves.
Indeed.
I advise all of us to consult with our hearts and find out where we are.
Indeed.
And if we change that, then Allah will change the world for us.
Indeed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you, Imams. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.